Hey, welcome to the July 16th, 2024 meeting of the Raymore Planning and Zoning Commission. I will call roll. No? Well, it's down here.
I'm sorry.
I'm going with order here.
Man, just let it do her thing. Okay,
Like,
man,
throw me off here. Okay, all right, I'm going to call roll. I thought we did the pledge too, but, you know, I don't know. So anyway, Commissioner Bowie, he's not here yet.
Sort of here. He's walking in now.
Okay, I'll come back to him. Commissioner Smith,
Present.
Commissioner Faulkner,
Present.
Vice Chair Pfizer is here. Commissioner Peterman,
Present.
Commissioner Shanks,
Present.
Commissioner Urquia,
Present.
Mayor Turnbow,
Present.
Commissioner Bowie,
Present.
and Chairman Wiggins is out. We have a quorum. Let's all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. We have no personal appearances tonight, so we will move on to the consent agenda, approval of minutes from the June 18th, 2024 meeting. Does anyone have any comments about this?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I move that we approve minutes from our June 18th, 2024 meeting.
Second.
Okay. We will vote on that. Is everyone, let's see, I guess, yeah, he was the second.
Right.
Okay, everyone, oh, I got a loss here. In favor, thank you. Everyone in favor of approval of the consent agenda, please raise your hand. Okay, it's unanimous. Okay. We will move on to, well, we have no unfinished business, so we'll move on to new business. And we will open the public hearing for this at, what time is it? 6:02. This is case number 24007, Chick-fil-A cup, or I always want to say it looks like Chick-fil-A cup. I can't even think what CUP stands for. I need to get my...
Conditional use permit.
Yeah, here it is right here. Okay, thank you. I'm just scatterbrained tonight. Is the applicant here? And just state your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, my name is Pete Hatcher. Address is 6487 Hilliard Drive, Canal, Winchester, Ohio 43110. I'm with Expedite the Deal, and I'm here to represent Chick-fil-A. I concur with the findings of staff, and I'll answer any questions you might have.
Okay. Do any of the commissioners have any questions for Mr. Hatcher? Seeing none, we will move on to the staff comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Hatcher. Tonight you have in front of you a request for a conditional use permit to install one additional wall sign, as the UDC allows for a total of 3 wall signs on a commercial building in a C2 general commercial district. They also would like to install one monument sign that is proposed to exceed the maximum lot size of 32 square feet, and the monument sign is proposed to be 50 square feet. The property is located at 1920 West Foxwood Drive and is currently zoned C2 General Commercial District. The surrounding zoning to the north is R1 Single Family, and to the south and to the east is C3 Regional Commercial District. To the west is the city of Belton. And as this is a public hearing, staff would like to enter into the record a list of exhibits 1 through 6. Number 1 being the mailed notices to adjoining property owners. Number 2, the notice of publication, which was published on June 19th, 2024 in the Northcast Herald. Number 3 is the Unified Development Code. Number 4 is the application. Number 5 is the growth management plan, and 6 is a staff report. There's been quite a bit of recent history for this property. If you all remember back, Well, I guess, so on March 13th, the Board of Zoning Adjustments approved the first variance request, which was to have 2 drive-through canopies, which project into the 30-foot front yard setback on both Kentucky Road and 58 Highway. And then on March 19th, this body actually approved the site plan for Chick-fil-A. And then April 10th, the Board of Zoning Adjustments had another request, which included to allow the trash enclosure to be located within 5 feet of the required front rear yard setback, as well as allowing the light levels to exceed 30-foot candles under the drive-through canopies, and finally requiring finally for the required landscaping to fall below the 20% requirement for the commercial uses. So there was a couple of variances just done at different times. Within the staff comments, just so anyone who isn't aware, the reason this wasn't under a variance request is that within the code, section 435.100 is a conditional use permit, and so anytime request to install a sign is not allowed in this chapter, or to install a sign that's not in conformance with the standards, that's why this is a conditional use permit as opposed to a variance. So I wanted to differentiate that and understand that if approved tonight, it would still go on for a first and second reading for City Council, as opposed to just being reviewed at the Board of Zoning Adjustments. Also, within the staff report, you'll notice section 435.050, sign types permitted. We wanted to put a table in here to kind of clarify bullet number 2 within the staff report. And so, with a total of 4 wall signs being proposed, in accordance with the Unified Development Code, 3 wall signs are allowed. However, within that table, it also has a caveat that allows for 1 under canopy sign. So if that wall sign were to be under the drive-through canopy as opposed to above, this would be permitted by right and not necessarily a request in front of you tonight. So the reason it's in front of you is because it's actually above the drive-through canopy and not under the drive-through canopy. And then this applicant is finally requesting the monument sign to be located really at the northeast corner of 58 in Kentucky. It does exceed the 32 square foot allotted amount for 1 monument sign. However, within the sign code, with this property being a corner lot, it actually would allow them to have 2 monument signs, 1 per street frontage, which would in total allow 64 square feet. So if you look at it from a different perspective, it's actually under the 64 square feet, which is the allotted amount now. And finally, there have been 10 conditional use permits that have been issued for the following properties, just kind of underneath, listed in the report, that have regarded signs. Most recently, it would be the Steak and Shake, or former Steak and Shake location at 1905 West Foxwood Drive, which is now Codes Dispensary, but was allowed 7 additional wall signs and increased the allowable sign copy area by 104 square feet. And this is back in August of 2012, so it's been a while since we've seen a conditional use permit that was approved. The most recent one we would have seen was the conditional use permit for the Raymore Journal. To conclude, staff has reviewed the request and determined the proposed additional wall sign, as well as the monument sign that exceeds the maximum allotted square footage, is a reasonable request. The subject property is located on a major arterial road and is a prime commercial corridor that's well established. Adequate signage is an important element for a business that is dependent on vehicle traffic, and so the UDC would allow the applicant to install 2 monument signs, which could total 64 square feet of signage. However, the applicant's preference is to reduce the total number of signs on the site by installing a singular monument. As a result, the request is to increase the size of just a singular monument sign as opposed to 2. Therefore, staff recommends that the Planning and Zoning Commission accept the proposed findings of fact and for case number 24007, Chick-fil-A conditional use permit, to the City Council with a recommendation of approval, subject to the 1 condition as outlined below, which is sign permits must be obtained before the installation of any sign permits are installed. You'll also notice in your packet there are site pictures as well as the sign proofs that are being proposed. Staff is happy to answer any questions, and this would conclude staff report.
Thank you. Do any of the commissioners have any questions for staff or the applicant?
Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
So maybe this is for the applicant as well. This is not the first Chick-fil-A in the Kansas City metropolitan area, nor is it the first community that has adopted a universal design code such as the City of Raymore has. I'm curious, are there conditional use permits that are also issued in other communities that you all have requested for
special permitting for a sign of this size? If you could step up to the microphone, please.
I can't say that for sure, but I would assume probably so.
Yeah, I just didn't know if the conditional use permit is something that you generally have to obtain in order to obtain that type of signage. I know that Andy's has considered our community and would love to have a large ice cream cone if they were to move here to the community. That would also require a conditional use permit, I would assume, by the zoning and by the council. So I was just kind of curious if that is a universal request that you guys at
Yeah, it's a
Chick-fil-A.
national brand change. You know, these signs are the national brand, so we try to
Right.
get these, you know,
Try to
types of signs
maintain
everywhere.
that national brand.
Right.
I got you. Okay, are you aware of any others, Dylan, that have been, that you've had any experience with or have talked to the folks at Chick-fil-A about with regard to signage?
So before this meeting, I had looked at just several other locations of Chick-fil-A just in the metro, and the overall size appears to be similar to what's being proposed tonight. It might just be more or less, is it covered in brick? Is it covered in, landscaping? So the sign itself is very similar. It might just be how it's outlined in material, so.
Okay, so my next question is for staff. Thank you very much. With regard to that sign at that particular location, it is elevated? Is that what you said? It will be elevated above the canopy?
Yes, so the wall sign, I guess I was trying to make the differentiation that they could, if they wanted to have a sign without the review of this body, they could just move that wall sign below the drive-through canopy that was approved by the Board of Zoning Adjustments. However, they're wanting it to be above so that you can see it from 58 and from Kentucky.
Are you talking about the menu board?
No, so it'll actually be a Chick-fil-A sign.
Sorry, I haven't looked at the pictures, so.
That's okay.
Okay,
If I could make just a
On the building
clarification, the
right.
the request is, it's one request for additional signage or signage that's not in conformance, but there are two separate signs that are being asked. The first one would be a wall sign on the building, and then the second request would be the monument sign out the corner of 58 in Kentucky. So hopefully that provides a little clarification for the nature of their request.
Yeah, I'm always concerned about the size of a sign when it is perched next to a heavy trafficked intersection. If Kentucky is going to be continued to use as a thoroughfare at that particular location, does it show in the diagrams the placement of that particular monument sign?
So right now in the diagram, it shows essentially by code, it has to be 5 feet off of the property line on both the west side and the south side.
And the property line, as it relates to the sidewalk, is where?
So it would be behind the right-of-way, which 58 has a large right-of-way.
Yes,
However,
it does.
there's also, within the code is their site site vision triangle that they would also have to be outside of. And that would be something that we would review at a staff level for when they submit their sign permits.
All right, thank you.
If you look at the drawing, how it may help to think about it is they're not, to get to the 50 square feet they're proposing, all they've done is increase the width of the sign and not necessarily the height of it. So the height of the sign would be permitted regardless of the conditional use that they're requesting tonight. The additional width of the sign allowed for the interchangeable message board that they change periodically. And so it added enough room to obtain that and the Chick-fil-A logo, which was a standard based on their application to staff.
Thank you.
I have a question for staff. The one street frontage sign at 32 feet, is that originally put into the zoning rules because of a visibility concern? What was the original intent for having it 32 feet per street frontage sign?
So I don't know that historically the city of Raymore has really encouraged very large signage. And so one of the things that I think we're kind of running up against, which is actually a reason that's kind of triggered a sign review by staff, is that a lot of the users that we're seeing are wanting larger signs. However, it's just never been that way where we've had, historically allowed larger signs obviously for safety and traffic and visibility and those types of things. So now we're having to try and go back and look at the sign code to see what's still viable for safety, but what is still going to help accommodate these users that are potentially coming in.
Okay, and that safety triangle you were kind of talking about, this group is not liable for anything if the people can't see and have issues, right? Well, that's not even up for us to decide, really, is it? Okay, thank you.
That would be, so as Dylan mentioned in his staff report, assuming this gets approved tonight, they still need to go through the approval process with staff with a sign permit for review. This just gives them the authority to prepare that permit. So staff would be in charge of reviewing the actual placement in more specificity than what is shown on the plan necessarily, to make sure it's outside the site triangle, 5 foot away from the property line, and it meets all those other requirements.
Commissioner Faulkner?
I do remember when the current sign code was put into place as part of the UDC, and in addition to concerns about visibility, et cetera, a lot of the concern that drove this current sign code was aesthetics, and I think in the many years that current sign code has existed, that it has actually pretty much accomplished what we wanted back then, and a lot of that was focused on the visual part of 58 Highway that's on Madison Street, in the curve, as we call it. And a lot of the focus was attempting to eliminate pole signs, which not a concern tonight. So first, I'd like to say that I'm very happy with current sign code. However, I think in this particular case, staff has presented good rationale both for increasing the number of wall signs, which the takeaway to me was the total of these 4 wall signs is less than the maximum area that would be permitted if it was only 3, and also the rationale to justify the increased size on the monument sign, which essentially was that Chick-fil-A is located on 2 frontages, Kentucky Road and 58 Highway, and therefore with current code, 2 monument signs would have been permitted at a total area of 64 square feet maximum. This proposed monument sign, is less than 64, it's 50. And so therefore the overall effect is basically less than Chick-fil-A could do if they chose to put up 2 monument signs. So to me, the rationale makes sense, but I wanted to state for the record that if we make an exception tonight with the conditional use permit for Chick-fil-A, my opinion is that I still feel like the current sign code is valid and worthwhile.
Commissioner Keel?
Oh, did you? Oh, okay. I was just looking at this. Does the base not count as part of the sign?
Correct. Within the code, it's actually the sign copy. And so the only time the base comes into play is for the overall total height, just to make sure it does not exceed the 6 feet.
Okay, so you can make the base 3 foot and then have a 3 foot sign and you'd still be okay?
That's correct.
Or any kind of variance of that?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other comments? Sorry.
I would just comment real quickly, the analysis provided by Commissioner Faulkner is absolutely accurate with regard to what is being proposed and the analysis of how it applies to current sign code. I would refer back to the Planning and Zoning Commission's, the findings of fact as provided by staff with regard to the other factors that would go into determining whether or not this is an appropriate approval for the CUP. That's all.
And one thing I wanted to add, if I could, based on a discussion Mr. Eppert and I had, when we started reviewing this application, we remembered that in 2015, I think it was, for a conditional use permit, there's, I think, 6 criteria for a general conditional use permit, if you're thinking about the use of a building or a property. I think it was in 2015 that the Planning and Zoning Commission adopted this procedure specifically for signage and adopted a totally different set of findings of fact specifically for signs. But I think it relates back to what Commissioner Faulkner said. It aligned more with what the sign code was intended to accomplish with regard to the visibility and appearance and height and material of signs. But that was one thing we remembered. If the instances that Mr. Eppert pointed out of all the other conditional use permits that were approved, all of those we found that were under the findings of fact for a general conditional use permit, and it wasn't until, I believe, 2015 that we adopted the specific criteria for the sign, which is the findings of fact that you have in front of you this evening.
Okay, thank you.
Just wanted to point out in findings of fact number 5, so one of the kind of overarching things that I feel like we did not highlight well enough in this application was the fact that the overall Chick-fil-A is looking to redevelop this site, and so they will actually take up one lot, and when they come through for final plat, it could be another lot that they would be adding for a potential user, which could have essentially 2 properties with being corner lots. So that would allow for 4 monument signs to be on that overall property if we were not to allow them to consolidate into one.
Thank
To
you.
that point, if we were not to allow them to consolidate into one, would they then do one sign with their logo and then one sign for the interchangeable wording? Or what would happen if we were to decline allowing the conditional use permit in this case? Do they have a backup plan?
Not sure that's for staff's determination.
Yeah, I was going to
Oh,
say,
that's fine. I mean, I
we
can
haven't
ask
necessarily
the
discussed it, but I can
applicant,
pass it
but
on to the applicant.
If the applicant wants to come up and answer the question, that'd be great.
Not at this time.
So your only plan is this plan, so the expectation is for it to go through as
The hope.
presented, basically? Okay, all right, thank you.
Any other comments by commissioners? Okay, any comments from the public? I don't see any public, so I will close the public hearing. That was very weak. There, that's a little better. Okay, would anybody care to make a motion on this subject?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Commissioner Faulkner?
I move that Planning and Zoning Commission accept staff proposed findings of fact and forward case 24007, Chick-fil-A conditional use permit signs to City Council with the recommendation of approval, subject to the one condition that sign permits must be obtained prior to installation of any signs.
We'll second that.
Okay, motion from Commissioner Faulkner to accept the staff proposed findings of fact at forward case number 24007, Chick-fil-A conditional use permit signs to the City Council with a recommendation of approval, subject to the following condition about sign permits being obtained prior to the installation of any signs, and seconded by Mayor Turnbow. Is there any discussion on this before we make a vote? Okay, let's vote. All in favor, raise your hand. Okay. All opposed? Okay, so we have okay, we have 7 for and 1 opposed. Mayor or Commissioner Kia.
Madam Chair.
Rounded him. Okay, as is usually the case, we will let you give your,
Yeah, so for me, the math's not mathing on allowing the total square foot with 2 different signs. I get that we're consolidating onto one and it's less than what the size of 2 different signs would be, but in my mind, a 50-foot sign compared to 2 32-foot signs wouldn't take up the same visual amount of space. I don't know what the impact would be on that to have an opinion for it, and so therefore I felt inclined to vote against it.
thank you. Okay, that concludes our new business, or I have to say it passed. Yeah, I think I did that already. Okay, so we will move on to the City Council report.
Thank you, Chairman. There have been 2 meetings since the last meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission, June 24th, 2024, and July 8th, 2024. A couple of things to report on from that based upon your prior work. The Creekside Ranch final plat, which was reviewed and approved unanimously by a vote of 6-0 on June 4th, 2024, was presented. This was the 23-lot single-family subdivision northeast of Gore Road and Kurzwell Road, provided for rural estate lots, including 22 3-acre lots and 1 10-acre lot. That received approval for a second reading at the City Council and final approval for that. So that was the unfinished business for June 24th, 2024. Thereafter, at the July 8th meeting, there was approval of the 195th Street right-of-way final plat. Again, you all had the opportunity to review this on June 24th, reviewed and approved it by a vote of 8-0. June 18th, 2024, reviewed and approved it by a unanimous vote of 8-0. And I believe that is all that I have to report for the City Council reports. Obviously, I'm happy to answer any questions you all might have, and Mayor Turnbow is present with us this evening, as well as Mr. Gress and Mr. Eppert, who may also be able to provide any answers if you've got them.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the staff report.
Thank you. Tonight I just have the one item. So tentatively, we will have a meeting on August the 6th. That will be an application for a site plan regarding Southtown storage. Right now that's tentative, so I'll kind of just keep you all in the loop as I know more information. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Gress for his report.
Thank you, sir. I wanted to provide some additional context to the monthly report that I provided in your packet, just some updates on a couple different projects. The commissioners may have noticed that Walmart actually is going under a remodel and an expansion at this time. They started that work last week, and so they'll be doing a remodel on the interior and the exterior of their building, as well as adding on a small portion of the building to better accommodate their grocery pickup and drop-off area. So you'll see a little bit of a disruption in traffic for the next 3 months or so while they work on that project to continue the work over there. Additionally, in relation to the case tonight, you've seen that the Chick-fil-A project is under construction. They've started the clearing of the parking lot, starting to work on some utility reconstruction on the property. We issued a demolition permit for the building last week, and that work is scheduled to start at the end of this month on the 29th to get the building torn down. Right now, they're working on removing some of the utilities from the property to get ready for that. And then lastly, I wanted to mention, because it is in relation to the topic tonight, each year staff brings forward our UDC annual review for consideration. The commission will remember each year we've brought that forward. We've kind of known that the sign code needs to be looked at in relation to some decisions of the Supreme Court as it relates specifically to signage. Our focus is really on temporary signage and kind of changing some of the rules in our code that are content-based right now, which they can no longer be. So a couple months ago, earlier this year, staff held a work session with the City Council to give kind of an update and an assessment of our code in relation to that court case. And so you'll see that as an item for discussion this year with some recommended changes from city staff, as well as a couple other sections of our city code that we've come across that also need to be updated. And so the commission can expect that probably in August, maybe the second meeting in August for consideration as we look to put that together for your feedback and input. Outside of that, I think that concludes our staff report, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any questions for staff? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to public comments. Once again, I see no public, so I think we can move on to commissioner member comments. So I will start on my right with Commissioner Faulkner.
Thank you to staff, as always, and thank you to Vice Chair Fizer for filling the role this evening.
Thank you. Okay, Commissioner Peterman.
No comment tonight.
Okay, Commissioner Shanks.
I'll second that.
Well, you guys are quick. Commissioner Bowie.
Thank you very much to the staff. Appreciate it. All your hard work is very much appreciated. All right.
Okay, I will move to my left. Commissioner Smith.
Appreciate the staff and everything they do.
Okay, Commissioner Arkia.
Echo those sentiments. Always appreciate what you guys do. I like the new format as well that I'm seeing on the packets, making it easier to follow and read. So whoever tweaked that or came up with that, kudos to them as well. Thank you.
Mayor Turnbow?
I would echo those sentiments and nothing further this evening.
Okay. Well, as usual, I have something to plug. So this Thursday at Culver's, the Raymore Community Foundation will be working there and serving food, and you can, I think 10% of all the profits will go to the foundation, which helps provide some of our art displays in town, and it goes to the Parks and Rec Department and to the Police Department. It's a great thing. So if you're hungry, go to Culver's. It's all day long from 10 till 10, and 10% of all the profits and 100% of the tips goes to the foundation. And speaking of art, there's a new art piece at Memorial Park that I believe was just put in today. It's part of the rotating art that comes to the city. So it'll be here for 2 years, I believe, and then something new will come. So go check it out. It's pretty cool. And that's really all I have. So if anybody would like to make a motion to adjourn,
So moved.
Second?
okay. See, a motion by Commissioner Urquia, seconded by Commissioner Faulkner. All in favor? I think that's unanimous. Meeting adjourned.